Hello Captains, it's the Doctor again. Welcome to more Let's Play Star Trek Online. Today I'm going to go over the skill system, the brand new skill system introduced in Season 11.5. I'm going to break this up into parts based on career. Today we're going to go over the science career. In the future I will do another part for tactical and another part for engineering based on what I've found out. So far I have pretty much got my hands into the science part of the skills and learned for a science character, science career, if you're a science career, what would possibly best work for you on a science career. I have yet to figure out the tactical and engineering careers, but I will get to those in a bit. So first, this is my character, the Doctor. He is a science character, so this build that I'm going to show you in the skill system is totally for a science career officer. Now, the ship that I am flying currently, I want to show you this just because it is relevant to what I'll be going over. I am currently flying a Crenum science vessel, and I have this thing geared up with powers such as feedback pulse, because one of the traits on this ship, the Starship Mastery, deals with feedback pulse, so that is one of my powers I'm using. Gravity well is another power, but it's only gravity well 1, whereas in a typical science ship I would normally have gravity well 3, so it'd be a little more powerful. I also have a tachyon beam as well. The reason why I'm showing you this is because you want to base your skill set, your skill stuff, based on the powers you're using for your starship, naturally. If you're using drain abilities, you want to put powers into drain abilities. If you're using control abilities, you want to put things into control. So you have to first figure out what powers you're going to use on your starship in terms of science powers, and then from there you develop your skill powers. So feedback pulse, I'm using drain stuff, and gravity well also is now control as well. So I am using both drain and control for my abilities here. So that's something I've got to keep in mind for the skill set when I go through it, is drain and control are going to be two things that's going to benefit me. Particle gens, actually, I think. Particle gens and control. We'll go over all that. Anyway, that's important. So first figure out your space powers. And of course, if you change ships, that can change, because naturally you may change your powers out and do different things. Like I said, I primarily use a Gravity Well 3 and a Tychon's Rift on my other science ships, but this one I'm just using Feedback Pulse on because of that trait. So normally I wouldn't have Feedback Pulse on. That means if I want to retrain, if I want to get another ship, another starship, and I switch out my powers to Tychon's Rift and Gravity Well, and I take away Tachyon Beam or Feedback Pulse, I'm not going to need that drain ability anymore. I'm going to, or the whatever ability those relate to, I could actually retrain my skills to be better suited for a different ship. And so you might actually find yourself retraining quite a bit with this new skill system. Anyway, what I'm going to show you now is the build that I am currently using, and I cannot give myself 100% credit for this build. This build was shown to me by another player. You will know who you are. I forgot your name, but if you see this, you'll know who you are. And actually, that player found it from a web page where somebody has uploaded what they feel is a really good DPS build for a science character. So this build is related to getting the most DPS out of a science character. Now there, of course, you could do it differently. You could not go that route. If you wanted to make a more balanced skill set, you could certainly do that, or you could make yourself a little more tanky or do some other different things or whatever. But this particular build I'm about to show you is all about getting DPS out of a science character. And I will say this ship I'm flying is not the best example of DPS for a science character. This ship I'm using, while it's a pretty good science ship with science abilities, it's not the best science DPS ship. Later on in this video, I'm going to show you an ISO run that I did where I am getting a certain level of DPS, and I will talk about that before and after the video, so you can see what this build actually yields in terms of damage and that sort of thing. I will say my very first build, this was actually a respec. My actual very first build of my science skill set was different. It was more balanced. This one relies heavily on putting skill points into science while sacrificing tactical and engineering. So let's bring it up and I will show you what this skill set looks like. This is it. And the first thing you will notice is you want to look down here at the bottom and see how many skill points I have into each category. You've got engineering, science, and tactical, obviously. I have 10 points into engineering, 26 points into science, and 10 points into tactical. So this is called the 10-26-10 build. 10 engineering, 26 science, 10 tactical. So engineering and tactical are pretty much evened out at 10, and most of the skill points have gone into the science categories, even if they're even if they're not really that important, because I think there are some skills in the science skill set that really are not that important that you could probably skip over. However, the reason why you want to dump 26 points into the science is to unlock a certain ability, and it's this one here called probability manipulation. For a small window of time, you can force the universe to see things your way, vastly increasing the chance that every bit of damage done to your foes will be a critical hit. And then you open up probability window, and you get increased duration of probability manipulation, and then probability penetration. Foes suffer attacking damage resistance when crit. Open this up here. So probability window, probability penetration, all goes into that probability manipulation set or ability, and you can only get that ability here at the end. These are these ultimate enhancements, they call them. You can only get to that ability by slamming a bunch of points into one category. So that's the key here. You'll see that engineering and tactical both stop here, but by slamming 26 points into science, we open up that enhancement at the end. And that's the only reason for putting that much in there, is to get to the probability manipulation, because that's the ability on a science character that is going to open you up to doing a whole lot more DPS. Now, if you're not DPS focused, that's not important. That's only if you want to maintain DPS, because you are sacrificing a lot in engineering and tactical. There's a lot of like power options in engineering that you're sacrificing. There's a lot of resistance and things like that. And under tactical, there are many things there that you're also sacrificing as well to get to the point of unlocking probability manipulation. My very first build of this was actually more evened out. I forget what the skill points were, but between engineering, science, and tactical, I actually have had the numbers evened out between all three. And that was a very balanced build, and I wasn't doing too bad with that build. I forgot what my DPS was, but it was not terrible. It was definitely well above 10k DPS, but it was not the best. Maybe it was like 15k DPS or something like that. Maybe a little bit higher than 15k DPS. So a balanced build can still wield you enough DPS to enjoy PvE content. You know, anything above 10k, you're going to be okay with PvE content. If you're doing things like hardcore STFs and stuff like that, having above 20k is probably preferred. And if you can get up to 30k, you'll really have no problem with in-game content, PvE in-game content in this game. So my initial build yielded me enough to enjoy the game, I mean, for sure. This build, where I'm currently at now, with this ship, mind you, this ship is a terrible ship for DPS, but where I'm at right now is I'm between 25 and 28k DPS. I'm going to show you an ISO run later on where I hit like 25 or 26k, but the highest I've gotten with this build is 28k. Now I know that doesn't sound really high, but compared to my balanced build before, that's about a 10k increase. I got about a 10k increase out of this build, and Again, I'm not using a very, very good science ship with, and I don't have the best weapons on the ship. I could be doing well over 30k with a different ship and different weapons and everything the way it's set up with this build. This build, basically, let me put it this way. If you have a balanced build, a balanced skill set, and you use this build instead, your DPS is going to go up about 10k, I would say. So that's pretty good. I mean, that's a nice bump there in DPS. All right, so let's just look at everything here. Stuff like this, for example, shield restoration. See, this is where the stuff that I find is not really that important to have. This skill increases the amount of shields restored by your outgoing healing abilities. Each point of shield restoration skill increases the base amount healed by 0.5%. I mean, you know, this kind of stuff, it really isn't that necessary. And in my initial build, I skipped the shield restoration stuff. Now the shield capacity I did do, because you have to have something here in this first row here. You have to have, you know, something selected to open up the next row, down and down and down. So I did max out my shield capacity in that build. And in this build, in order to get, you know, that probability manipulation opened up, you're just going to have to dump everything into science no matter what. But the shield capacity one I like, and that's especially good for a science character anyway, because science ships typically have the highest shield modifier. So if you can put extra shield capacity skill in there, your shield capacity can potentially be really, really high on a science ship. And a lot of your defense can come from that, in fact. If you have to sacrifice defense in the engineering section, this extra shield capacity can make up for that. So I think that's a very good skill to have on the science stuff anyway, on a science build. But I really would probably, you know, because I'm doing this particular build, I have to put skill points into advanced shield restoration. But normally I find those skills would be kind of useless. Moving down, this is where it starts to get interesting between whatever space powers you're using. This is where you need to determine where you want to put your space powers. Now, because I want to hit this probability manipulation, I've got to have all of it selected anyway. But, you know, if you were just building for a specific type of thing, you've got control expertise and drain expertise. And these are two very different things. And apparently, things like gravity well is a control ability now. And that's one of the hardest things that I've had to figure out with this skill set. This new skills ability is what is a control effect, what is a drain effect, you know, and what things affect what, because it's changed. It says this skill increases your command of control effects, including both your effectiveness when using them and your ability to resist the same effect. So it's not just your power to use that effect, it's also the resistance of that effect from the enemy, which I find cool. I'm glad they combined the two. So you have both the power and the resistance combined into the same skill. I think that was an awesome move. But things that are control effects are disable, hold, repel, pull, confuse, placate, flight speed debuffs, and turn rate debuffs. So out of that, the gravity well, because it holds, it is a flight speed debuff, I think, and also a turn rate debuff. I want to say that it is a disable as well, the gravity well. Maybe the Tychon's Rift is the disable. But those are the kind of abilities that you have to look for in your powers to see if they match up the skill set. So you would say, okay, some of those things, yeah, they do apply in a gravity well or a Tychon's Rift. So that is a control ability. So because I'm using gravity well, I definitely want to have my control expertise there. So you've got level 1 of that, and then you got level 2 of that. But then there's this one extra thing you can do. You can kind of enhance the ability of that control by this thing called control amplification. Activating any ability that causes an enemy to suffer a control effect will temporarily reduce their damage resistance. So it's like an extra ability added on to that. So I think those are worth it. You just have to determine, is what you're using a control effect or is what you're using a drain effect? And we'll look at the drain expertise here. This skill increases there's some grammar errors here, your command of drain effects, including both your effectiveness when using them and your ability to resist the same effects. Drain effects include all of the following: shield drain and damage, subsystem power drain, subsystem offline, power transfer rate debuffs. So you've got to ask yourself, what powers are you using that this shows here. I mean, a shield drain, for example, that would be a tachyon beam. Tachyon beam is a shield drain, so that's a drain expertise ability. So anything that does subsystem power drain or subsystem offline or power transfer rate debuffs. I think Gravity Well is both a control and a drain. I want to say that. But you see, this is where some of the confusion comes in, is figuring out what those abilities actually are and what of the skill set will actually benefit it. There used to be a thing in the old skill system that right at the top here you could select, and you could select your power. Remember that? You could select the power that you wanted, and it would highlight the boxes that you need to put skill points in to buff that power. Remember that? That was an awesome feature that is completely missing here, and it needs to be here. I need to be able to select Gravity Well here, and it needs to highlight which boxes are going to benefit me with Gravity Well. Is it a drain and a control? I need to know that, and this doesn't tell me like the old system used to. That's what's going to be more confusing for anybody in this new skill set, is figuring out what your powers, what skills actually buff your powers. Because they've changed things, like before, Gravity Well wasn't considered a control effect. It was particle generators all the way. But now it is control and possibly drain as well. So it would help to have a button up here to select the powers you're using on your starship to highlight which boxes control that power so you can buff it correctly or know which ones you want to put your boxes into. I wish it did that. That is I can't believe they took that feature out. I mean, that was an awesome feature, and it's not here. They've just made it more confusing for everybody, especially new players. I mean, no new player is going to know what the heck a control ability or a drain ability is. They're just not going to know that stuff. I don't even know that stuff anymore since it's changed. So they need to put that ability back in there, because right now it's confusing. I hope Cryptic is watching this video. That needs to be a feature. Put it back. We need it. All right, but moving on. Of course, you have your Drain Expertise 2, and then your Drain Infection, which is the ability added on to that Drain ability. Anytime you cause an enemy to suffer an energy drain or shield drain, they will also be afflicted with a short duration electrical damage effect as their EPS conduits overload. This is not a lot of damage. I guess it adds to your overall DPS, but it's not like a total shocker of a damage. Pun intended. Lame pun intended. But it is something anyway. Moving down to Commander. Again, to get to this probability manipulation, we're just going to have to dump all our points into Science anyway. But shield regeneration, this is something I probably would not put points in if I had a choice, if I wasn't building, a total like DPS Science build. This skill increases the amount of shields that are passively regenerated on a continuous basis. I don't know. I just think it's a waste of skill. I don't know of any build that actually uses this. I mean, maybe an escort, I guess, maybe. But nah. I mean, I would pass on as a Science character. I've got a really good shield capacity, and as long as you got something to heal your shield, Science team or something like that can bring your shields back, good enough, or emergency power to shield or something like that, you don't really need that. Now this one, maybe this is Advanced Shield Hardness. This skill increases the amount of incoming damage negated by your shields. So if you're having trouble with defense, this could help with that. By default, each point of shield subsystem power negates 0.2% of damage, and it increases here plus 15 shield hardness. I don't know overall how much that really helps, but I mean, I guess if you're dying a lot, I mean, you're gonna have to put something into Science in this level anyway, so you might as well go with the shield hardness. Unless you're an escort, then maybe shield regeneration. But right now I'm just thinking of Science ships. We'll get to escorts and engineering and cruisers in another video, but right now I'm just thinking of a Science ship, and I don't know, I'd probably go with the hardness. Now the last category, Admiral. This is, by the time you get to here, you'll have 2 points left to put in Science. And so, well, I mean, you could put more, but you'd have to sacrifice others. This build puts it in Scientific Readiness, and improves scientific readiness. So this skill provides a bonus to your ability recharge for all science bridge officer abilities. For each point of scientific readiness skill, these abilities will recharge 0.2% faster. So basically, a reduction on your science bridge officer abilities. That way you can use them faster and more, and that of course will help get your DPS up. And that's it. That's all you can do. I mean, if you didn't put skills into like shield regeneration and stuff here, you would have one left to put here in advanced scientific readiness and get it all the way maxed out, or shield mastery. Every several seconds you will gain shield mastery. While this effect is active, the next critical hit you suffer will be completely negated. I had this in my original build. It's good for defense, but not really will help with DPS. But in a balanced build, I would probably definitely go with shield mastery and some scientific readiness. So that is what you have to do on the science if you want to open up basically the enhanced ability. So now let's go through all the science abilities that open up down here, because you have choices you have to make too. This is the first one you have to make. Choice selection. Sector space travel speed or transwarp cooldown reduction. Well, that really doesn't matter which one you choose there. It's not going to matter with your DPS. This one is just totally up to you. Do you want to travel faster in sector space, or do you do more transwarps and you want them to cool down faster? Doesn't matter, totally up to you. This next one, however, does make a difference. This is projectile critical chance or projectile critical damage. Now the goal here is that our critical chance, yes, we want that to be high, but we also want to do more damage by our critical hits. So projectile critical damage space skill increases your critical severity by plus 5% for torpedoes and mines. Remember, this build is all about DPS, so it's about getting the most damage you can possibly get, and that goes in hand with the probability manipulation, which is going to give you more critical hits anyway. So you want to go ahead and choose the more critical damage. Same thing over here. Energy critical damage you want to do increases your critical severity by plus 5% for energy weapons. And then we come over here. This one is accuracy or defense. I went with accuracy because, again, we are going for the most DPS on this one. But if you needed a little more defense, there's an option for it. And then finally we come to the enhanced ability. And this is the one that we were aiming for in this build to get the most DPS. And that is probability manipulation. And then the other two abilities, we opened up probability window. That's very important because that increases the duration of probability manipulation. It's only 15 seconds normally, but if you do probability window, it doubles it and it lasts 30 seconds. So you definitely want probability window. And then I did probability penetration. Foes suffer a stacking damage, resistance rating, debuff when crit. And that is what allows you to do a lot of DPS damage as a science character using a good enough ship and weapons and all that, considering everything else. But it does sacrifice a lot in engineering and tactical. So let's quickly go over what is selected here in engineering and tactical. Hull restoration. The skill increases the amount of hull restored by your outgoing healing abilities. Each point of hull restoration skill increases the base amount. I mean, you have to select it to open up the others anyway. Hull capacity. This skill increases the maximum hull capacity of your starship. So just a little bit more hull capacity, but we have to open that up so we can go to these others. Electroplasma systems, EPS, is very important pretty much with any build. This skill improves the speed at which power can flow between all your subsystems. And you definitely want that maxed out. This skill improves the speed. Plus 40 electroplasma systems. EPS is very important for like any build. So EPS. But what you don't need is the full impulse energy shunt. That might be cool on an escort, but you won't need it on this science build. This skill provides direct bonuses to the transfer of power that occurs while using full impulse. But what we did max out here is impulse expertise. This skill increases the speed and turn rate of your starship. While each starship has its own base value, each point of impulse will always provides a bonus to those values. Your base speed and turn values are determined by a combination of your ship's impulse modifier, blah, blah, This build said to max it out, so that's what I did. I guess you have to do that to unlock others. I'm not sure. I don't know really why that's so important on a science ship, other than it does help you turn better and move better. But personally, I would have put more skills into power options, because down here there are some very lacking options, I think. First of all, hull plating. This skill reduces the damage taken from all incoming sources of damage, providing you damage resistant rating. And then nothing here. This is damage control. That's probably okay. Yeah, that's the passive regeneration of your hull. Same thing as the shield thing. I think that's kind of useless on this build. Defensive subsystem tuning. This skill improves the amount of subsystem power available in your shields and auxiliary subsystems. See, this is where I would have possibly changed this build a little bit. Although I guess I wouldn't have had enough to put into science, I'm not sure, because auxiliary power is very, very, very important on a science ship. I mean, that is what makes or breaks your science powers. You want a lot of auxiliary, so this would help your auxiliary system power. And recharge time reduction for, well, I don't use hanger pets, but this skill improves the amount of subsystem power. But yeah, shield, that's shields. Subsystem on your shields and auxiliary, and that's shields on auxiliary. So I would, yeah. And here's the auxiliary systems. See, I would put more. I would put something here into auxiliary. I think that would be a little more important, especially for a science build. So that's what this build is missing. But again, this build is based on doing DPS with like your energy weapons and your torpedoes, rather than your science abilities. If you want to do damage with your science abilities, yeah, you definitely want to get auxiliary subsystem performance. I am not going to keep this build as my final build. I am going to change this, but I definitely want more aux power in my science builds. Offensive subsystem tuning. This will help your weapon power. That'll be important on an escort, but I guess not a science. And then warp core potential. That's important on any build, I think, and warp core efficiency as well. And improved warp core potential. I would put here, I would do defensive subsystem tuning and then auxiliary subsystem performance, and then I would max out all three of these warp core potentials for sure. That's one thing I would change. Engineering readiness, don't need that here in the science thing. Now let's look over tactical. Energy weapon training, I mean, that's just important. This skill increases the base damage of most directed energy weapons, so you definitely want to max out energy weapon training. Projectile weapon training, I'm surprised. I mean, there's just no room left. Once you max out 26 in science, there's just no room left. But you would be doing more projectile damage if you could max that out. Targeting expertise and defensive maneuvering, they got nothing in here on this build. Weapon amplification. This skill increases the bonus damage that your weapons inflict when launching a critical hit, so that's important. But then this skill increases the chance. So here's where the more critical chance comes from, is this one here. And then here we've got hull penetration. This one is important too. This skill increases the damage dealt by your weapons by penetrating your enemy's resistances. So this is armor penetration, and this build has it maxed out. So that is important. Shield weakening, we'll just ignore that. And then there's nothing down here for coordination protocols or tactical readiness. So this build definitely sacrifices a lot in engineering and tactical, and it kind of dumps everything into science to open the enhanced ability up. Like I said, this did increase my DPS by 10k, but now that I've spent more time with this skill system, this would not be my final build, because there are many things here. I want to concentrate a little bit more on my science build by using my science powers. So I would put some into aux power, I'd put more into warp core efficiency, I would strip down these shield things, improve shield restoration and shield regeneration. I would strip down that stuff and put things into other positions, and I probably would just not worry about probability manipulation in my next build. But I just wanted to show you guys this build because I know it works. It is a build that if you just want to do some damage as a science officer, you can, but it does sacrifice a bit of those science powers and their abilities because of the lack of extra aux power and warp core efficiency you could be using to get more damage out of your science abilities. And some other things you could have put into tactical as well, like projectile damage if you're using torpedoes and that sort of stuff. So this is just one potential build. Again, I wish I could show you my other build, but I didn't make a video of it, unfortunately, before, and I should have before I changed this, because I don't have many, how many do I got 3 retrain tokens. I'm definitely going to respec this and make it different for my final build, because again, there are different abilities that I use on different science ships, and this doesn't really fit what I normally run. So I will change it, but I wanted to show you this and just kind of give you guys an idea of what you could do for your science skills and a rundown on the science skills and what are there. So now you kind of know what's there for science, and you can ask yourself the question, you know, is this a science ability? What skill set is affecting what science ability? Because it all comes down to what powers you're going to use, what ship you're going to use first, obviously. You know, you got to first determine your ship, and then from that determine your powers, and then from that determine what skills buff those powers. That's kind of the order of operations there. Let me go up and I'll show you probability manipulation and what that does in space and the stats on that, just so you can see what that is. If you wanted to go for that enhanced ability, you'll be able to see here what it does. Here it is right here, probability manipulation. Increased critical hit chance is what it is. So that's where our increased hit chance comes from. To self, set critical chance to 50% for 30 seconds. So that's the benefit of it, is that now we are going to be, and that's how we're getting the DPS here. We're doing critical hits. So to get more critical hits, you got to have a higher critical chance, and that's what probability manipulation does. Critical chance to 50% for 30 seconds. Probability shell plus 100 bonus hull and shield healing for 30 seconds. Probability penetration. Minus 5% all damage resistance rating for 20 seconds to foes on critical hits. Probability window. Increases duration of probability manipulation from 15 seconds to 30 seconds. So basically it's that increasing our critical hit chance by 50% is what's going to allow us to do more critical hits to do more damage. So let me... window is so big now. Go to our stats. So here's where I'm sitting at. My crit chance is 14.6 right now. Crit severity is 81.6. So when we hit this ability, let's see what happens. There you go. Crit chance is instantly 50%. So that's the benefit here of probability manipulation. And it lasts for 30 seconds because of probability window. So for 30 seconds, my critical chance is at 50%. So that's where our damage is coming from. We're going to have an increased ability to do critical hits. And then after 30 seconds, that should go back to normal. And you'll notice, yep, there it went, back to normal. So there you go. Here's my power levels. 76 on Ox is not very high for a science character, so I would like to have more Ox power. Something like emergency power to Ox is probably what you want to have then, if you're not going to have more Ox power set in the skill system. 50 shield, 50 engine, 89 shield. My shield power is real high. 119 weapons. Yeah, I mean, that's it. That's what you're doing. I have this kind of power combo with this ship, which is really nice, and I put it here. I've got emergency power to weapons, my enhanced critical chance, and then I've got this one which comes with this ship. This is called chronometric energy converter. This is more exotic damage, but more importantly, extra energy weapon damage, plus 22.7% energy weapon damage for 30 seconds. So I can do a whole bunch of like punch damage, I'll call it, I don't know. Where I can do this, and this together, and then of course I can do beam overload 2 and do a whole bunch of damage to an enemy like that. So let me bring up real quick my weapon window here. So this is my dual Thoron infused Polaron bank, and it's doing 1556 DPS. But if I do my power combo, it is at 2185 DPS. I mean, and now I have a 50%. I have that 50% critical chance, so I can, you know, fire on my enemies and hopefully land a lot of critical hits on them as well. And that's how you do damage as a science character, pretty much. So that's pretty cool. but it does sacrifice some of the abilities in my science abilities, like my gravity well. I've only got gravity well 1 on this ship, which is already not as powerful as gravity well 3, which I use on most other science ships. And because I don't have a lot of aux power and warp core potential, its abilities are down just a little bit. If I had more aux power or emergency power to aux or something, could do more with that. And if I had gravity well 3, I'm using feedback pulse 3 simply because I'm testing the ship out right now, and its mastery is a feedback pulse mastery. It goes in line with feedback pulse, so I'm testing that out. Here's a drain ability, tachyon beam, being boosted by that skill. So yeah, a lot of your science powers are really going to come down to, you know, what science powers you're using on the ship, and then what skill set, you know, benefits that. I don't know what else to show you guys, because at this point, you know, it just is, you know. Like I said, all right, here's what we'll do next. I've got it figured out. What we'll do next is I'll go ahead, I'll cut to the my ISA run. I'm going to show you an ISA run where I did 25 to 26k DPS depending on the reader, CLR, SCM, one of them. They produce a little bit different results. But on this particular build with this ship, with weapons that are pretty crappy, I've got Thoron infused Polaron beam, chronometric Polaron beam, advanced Thoron infused Polaron beam, and 2 360-degree beams that are not very powerful at all, especially this one, the omnidirectional chronometric Polaron beam, not very powerful. I don't have very good weapons, even though a lot of my consoles are epic. My weapons are not, and for this ship, very limited. And the reason why I have these particular weapons selected is because, again, I'm testing the ship out. I'm going to do a review on it, and I want these sets, these space sets, like this one. This one is the, what is this one called? The Delta Operations. This one is called the Chronometric Calculations. So I'm experimenting with sets like that and trying them all out and stuff. So I'm not using the best weapons, but so consider that. Consider I'm using a ship that's really not good for DPS, and I'm using feedback pulse, which is, again, not really what I would want to use, and I don't even have the best weapons on this ship. Consider all of that, all of those shortcomings, and the fact that this build is still getting me between 25 to 28k DPS, almost 30k DPS. I have hit 28k with this build. So consider that, and that is not a bad thing. If I had a better ship and better weapons, I would be well over 30k with this build, and there's potential for even more. There really, really is. So, and it's all because of this probability manipulation, getting that 50% critical chance. I mean, it comes in handy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut to that ISA run. I don't have any vocals during that. I didn't record any talking or commentary through that. So just watch the video, watch the run. Maybe I'll put some music to it. I don't know. Watch the run. You'll see my ISA run. You'll see me use the probability manipulation. You will see me use the energy converter here and all that. And you will see how that works. And at the end, you'll see the parsing results and how it came out for this build on this ship with those weapons. Again, it could be better. It's not the best, but it is higher than what I had before, and I look to further improve my science build beyond that. This is, again, not going to be my final science build or final use of the science skill set, but it is what I have right now. And what I'm going to do in the future is work on a tactical skill set and an engineering skill set and come back with videos on what I found out about that. Anyway, I hope this video helps somebody. I know the new skill system is confusing and you're wondering what to use, what to do with it. It is confusing, and hopefully we are slowly learning more about it, and I think I've learned a lot about the science part of it, and I really need to learn more about the tactical and engineering parts of it, which I will get to. And yeah, just again, I hope this helps somebody out there with a science build. Have at it, try it. If it doesn't work for you, try something else. One thing I have found is it did sacrifice a bit of my defenses, But that same person said most of your defenses should come from your traits anyway, like your space traits or your starship traits or your space reputation traits. A lot of your defenses should probably come from those traits more than from the skill system, at least if you want to use a lot of science powers or do a DPS science build. Anyway, that's where I'll leave it. Hopefully this helps someone. Hopefully that wasn't too confusing. Hopefully we've all learned something today. And please enjoy. Leave your comments and let me know what you think and what your science builds are like as well. And I'll take a look at that. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for the next one.